Hello, everybody. We are back. It's another week. This is or episode number 27 for Page Chewing Comics and Manga. And the series is called Pick of the Week, Weekly Polls. Steve and I are back. We've got a few exciting titles to cover. What's really interesting this time is we don't overlap at all. So we're each going to talk about something different. It's once again, we're going back to comics from being away for a long time. In my case, even longer, I think, than Steve, because when I first started, I was probably maybe 8 or 9 years old when I started going to the comic store. And just kind of thumbing through different issues and picking up random ones because I didn't know what I was doing, and probably reading in the store itself. So we're doing the thing where we go into that old brick and mortar and we're physically picking up comics issues. We see things that inspire us that we may or may not like based on the author or based on, sometimes it's the artwork itself. Then we talk about what we may or may not like, and then what we would recommend as our final pick of the week. And so, Steve, I think you're going to start us off today.
Yeah, it's kind of a rough week. We just talked a second ago that we aren't always discussing books that were released that week because sometimes I get to the bookstore late. We talked about that too, about sometimes we get to our bookstores late and we have slim pickings and we go back the next week, and sometimes there's a restock and we can pick up books that we missed. Or sometimes we just don't make it in time. So kind of a rough week because there's not a whole lot that I enjoyed, sadly, unfortunately. But I think that's part of the fun, is just giving an honest opinion about what we like or don't like. And it's tough to keep up with so many books. So making lots of cuts this week from my list. So the first one is Borealis number 2. I talked about this a few weeks ago. I was pretty iffy on the series. I wasn't really sure where it was going or what really wasn't really sure, but I was hopeful that things would turn out. Unfortunately, picking up issue 2, we learn more about our main character, Syl. But sadly, the rest of the story did not grab me at all. The dialogue seemed very by the numbers, and all the characters felt like kind of all just carbon copies of characters you've seen before 1,000 times. And it just, sometimes you read a book and the dialogue just doesn't seem like what people would say. And we're reading about these, epic ideas and these fantasy worlds, and of course, it's not something that anyone would say, but it just sometimes it just feels a little too familiar. That was my problem with Borealis. It just took me out of the story. It just didn't draw enough interest for me to continue. And about halfway through, I just kind of checked out. I just didn't care. The art is fine. I think the art's okay. But yeah, sometimes you have to make those cuts from the list, and this is one I'm going to have to cut, even though there's one more left. There's not enough interest for me to continue going. There's some ideas here that are being worked, but when it's such a short run, I think it's a 3-issue run, and in issue 2, they're introducing a lot more things. It feels like a little too fast, and I worry about the 3rd issue being a disappointment because there's new characters and storylines being introduced, and I don't want to be disappointed with issue 3. So unfortunately, Borealis number 2, that'll be my last foray into this one.
I just pulled it up online and taking a quick look here. It looks. Is it more of a crime theme, or there's something else, something more supernatural going on as well?
There's both. It's a crime. It's kind of a character who is shunned from her town, or kind of ran off, and she comes back with the chip on her shoulder, and she's really abrasive, and people from her town are kind of pushing back on her. I think she's trying to do the right things, but yeah, there's some supernatural elements going on here that I just didn't. It wasn't enough for me to grab another issue.
Okay. So that brings me to my first foray here today. Boy, this is a long title. I don't know if I'm doing this right, but there's just a lot of title work on the cover here. So we've got Superman Action Comics number 1061. And there's a few subtitles here. Superman Superstars. Not sure what that means, if that's an event or what have you, probably. And then the kind of main subtitle here is I, Bizarro, Part 1. I think I might have even alluded to this last time we talked. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is by DC and by Aaron, Timms, and Locus. Well, it's been a long time since I've delved into the Superman world, with the exception of last week, where we talked about Kneel Before Zod, and I really liked that one. I was pleasantly surprised, let me say. This one I thought might be similar. It's certainly a different take, and it must have something to do with Action Comics. And Steve, I'd love to hear your take on this, because you know much more than I do. But Bizarro is one of those characters that, it just intrigues me. And, everything he does is kind of backwards or the opposite of what Superman would do or what we would do. And this takes place on a very interestingly titled planet in the beginning called Planet Xerox, kind of obviously like a copy. And Bizarro has absolutely no idea why he is there. So there's a lot of mystery, but eventually, quickly we cut to Superman himself, Bizarro and Superman they battle each other, and we learn very quickly that Bizarro has developed these arcane magic type of abilities, like wizardry or sorcery, if you would. I think it was fine. It's not maybe what I was hoping for, because I was maybe riding the tidal wave of last week. I very similar to what you just said. I feel like the writing was just kind of it was okay. There was some things that were interesting. And the ending was quite good, though. I was surprised by the ending, because something bizarre, for lack of a better word, happens that has big implications for the world. So I would say structurally was good, but the actual story or writing or dialogue, I should say, was kind of meh. So I don't know if I'll be continuing. I think I can't tell if it's a multi-part series or what, but I can't tell with these things. This is issue 1000 something. So do you know it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a little bit. I mean, I know that we talked about coming back from being gone, and just seeing that issue number sometimes is a little intimidating. You kind of feel like you're left out. But I think the action series is kind of like what I remember from like something like Detective Comics being, is that you can kind of jump in at a new beginning of a new story. So it seems like they kind of structure it in a way that readers like us who are getting into it can kind of jump in and get a little 2 to 5 part series and kind of decide whether or not we can continue. But yeah, it's like Bizarro. I think we talked about it last week. I think the anti-Superman characters are more interesting than the Superman character is, just because it's a kind of a play on it. And there's only so many things you can do with a character like Superman. I think you have to really, introduce new elements and do something different with him to make it interesting, at least for me. Because I know some people have stuck with it for a long time, and they just love reading stories about Superman and his adventures. But there has to be something new for me to be interested in it. Something different, something a big. I think the last time I was really interested in Superman was probably like Blackest Night, 10 plus years ago, and that was the last time I really paid much attention to it.
Yeah, okay. Isn't that the Green Lantern?
Hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough. Xerox, that's kind of a funny play on it, though.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So this week I heard a lot about Cobra Commander, and I heard that it's, because as a kid I loved GI Joes and all the toys, and I had all the stuff, and it was one of those things. But the comics, from what I hear, is that what I heard is that the Cobra Commander series is a more grounded, violent, adult take, like an HBO version of GI Joe and Cobra Commander. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. This is by Joshua Williamson and Andrea Milana. It's by Image Comics. So, from what I didn't realize is, I thought that this was like a standalone or like a Cobra Commander series, but it turns out that they're launching a new universe, and this new universe includes other franchises. Now, I won't give away which other franchise it overlaps with, but it's melding different franchises together, and all the connected universes and all. I'm just burnt out on all that stuff. Just give me a good story. Just give me something fun. I would much rather have a standalone Cobra Commander series that is like an adult take on it. And there was some of that. There was some, his origin, and some of it was kind of neat to see a different take on it. But when I read kind of what other franchises are being overlapped into this, I just completely lost interest. I have no interest in getting into a new shared universe. I just don't care. And so unfortunately, it was fine, but it's not going to be something I'm going to keep track of, because if you commit to a new series like this in a new universe, you're buying 5 or 6 books a month to keep up with different crossover events, and I'm just not interested in it. So while I do appreciate the fact they're taking a swing and they're doing something different, I'm just not interested. So it's one of those where I can appreciate what they're doing, but I'm out. So I was bummed out about that.
Yeah. I had that one in my hands, and then I thought, is this going to be similar to my experience that I had with Transformers, which is, I think, it's also by Image. They're both Image.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think they are now. I'm not sure how that happened. I think they were Marvel for a long time. I guess maybe the series got changed over, was available, and Image is picking it up, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I was probably less of a GI Joe person back in the day. So, yeah. So it looks like I might have dodged a bullet on that one, but you never know. I could check it out, and it might be for me. So
yeah, you never know. It might hit all the right bits. So you never know.
So this is an excellent segue. Speaking of franchises, Steve, I know this used to be one of your favorites, which is Alien. I think I might have said I was out on Alien 2, but now I think the pickings were pretty slim, so I went for it. And I won't say I'm glad I did, but there's some things that move things forward here. So this is Alien. It's got a subtitle. I think it's Alien Descendant, but it doesn't say that on the cover. Number 3, still by Marvel, by Declan Shalvey, Andrea Brocado, and Ruth Redmond. So we're kind of picking up where we left off, more or less. There's really 3 storylines going on. There's one way into the future. There's one not too far into our future. And I should say there's 2 that are kind of happening simultaneously that are, I forget the year now. I think it's like 2500 or something, and then a storyline that takes place later. And one thing that I will say that's kind of interesting, but did not work for me from an artwork perspective or a a visual perspective is we get a different take on a xenomorph here. So it might have something to do with the fact that this takes place on an ice moon type of situation. And so if you can think of, and one of the covers has shown this, that xenomorph may have adapted to that environment. But one thing that was bizarre to me, different to me, is it seems to have hair. Which I did not, so I don't know what's going on there. I'm not going to read into it too much, but it was funky looking. One of the main characters is a woman. I think her name is Zash, and she does reconnect with somebody. I should say a thing from her past that was alluded to in the first earlier on. So I will say, what I've kind of liked is that these storylines converged, and maybe before that it just felt very disconnected. There was a really, I don't know, there was a kind of big reveal or scare at the end as well. Not going to say what, but did not work for me. So we're in issue 3 out of 4. I might just stick around, but it's not. I may be less likely to cut bait here because there was only one left. And I've really been out of the alien world for a long time, so I don't know. Might stick with it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I had that one in my hands, and I thought, well, I think Mike said he's done, so maybe I won't take the chance.
It was really slim. There was not much left there, so I think because I think we've said this before, but maybe because it's Marvel or whatever, there's a lot. Well, I've listened to your film podcast. Film chewing, and I think we know that there's going to be a TV series, an Alien Romulus film. I don't think you seem too excited about either of those, but
no. Well, I did hear that they're, not to get too sidetracked, but I did hear that they are ignoring the prequel storylines, so they're going off of the original series and ignoring the Prometheus and Alien Covenant storylines as far as origins go. So I think that's a little bit encouraging. Good, not to get too deep into Alien, but I think, not to spoil anything, but I think that it's more interesting not knowing some things that you learn in the prequels. And I think there's more things to play with if you can ignore those storylines, which from a creative standpoint, I can kind of see how that would be a benefit, because I think you have more room to play without those confines. But we'll see. So another one for me this week, and I saw this on the shelf. It is Dear Editor number 1. It's by Ryan K. Lindsay and Sammy Canilla. This is by Mad Cave Studios. I'm a fan of Mad Cave. I think they do some pretty good stuff, so I thought, well, I'll give it a chance. I like the cover grabbed my attention, and then later I wondered why it did. It's beautiful artwork. I love the art, the colors and the tones that are used, and kind of the aesthetic. I really like the aesthetic. So in this one, we follow Bucky. He's an investigator, and he's unwrapping kind of like a cover-up, trying to solve this mystery. And, they're just, with the series like The Sacrificers, when they're all animals, and the world is based around that, or Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, where it's a bunch of stuffed animals that are in this world living together, it's one thing. But when we're in a world of humans and there's a deer editor with a deer head and human body, and I just can't take it seriously. I just couldn't get into it. It's just didn't do it for me. Another one that halfway through I just lost interest. I know that some people really like this kind of thing, and that's cool, but for me, it just doesn't work. I just couldn't immerse myself in this world. So while I do appreciate, I want to say that a lot this week. While I do appreciate the artwork and the kind of the aesthetic and the feel and the tone, the story just wasn't for me. And it's another one that I'll have to throw in the towel after one.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I did check it out quickly online here as well, and yeah, it looks. There's not a lot of color, right? It's if I understood.
No, there's lots of tones that, yeah, lots of tones, and there's not a lot of color, but I think the use of color was pretty clever. I did a, you can appreciate it for the artwork and for the feel, but deer-headed journalists just kind of silly for me. And it, like I said, maybe I'm just too I don't know. Not for me.
Okay. All right. So, coming back to the world of Guma, don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. This is by Titan Comics. The creator is Ji-Hyung Lee, and there's also Nemetse Zitso involved. And I gotta say, I want to mention very quickly, I looked up Ji-Hyung Lee, and he's very well known as a cover artist. He's done some beautiful cover artwork like She-Hulk and a few others. And so I think he does the covers, and he's certainly involved in the artwork here. And I also learned that this was a Kickstarter project. So I just did a little bit of research for whatever reason. We have some of the same characters from issue 1. Khalida and Marcia, I believe, are the names. And they're trying to escape their situation. They're really in an awful situation. As I mentioned before, this is like a urban fantasy or horror mashup, and they're dealing with drug use and this kind of crime syndicate that's over their heads. So we learn about how whatever they need to do to get out of that situation, which to me is interesting. I do find the story to be a little convoluted, and I would say if you went back all the way to issue 1, there's things that were alluded to that did not come back here. So I'm feeling a little bit confused. That being said, the artwork to me is gorgeous. I mean, the way they are able to depict motion, light, and even like wind or air, if you would. I'm just impressed with it. I think they put a lot of resources into the artwork. I do wonder about this. I do feel the story is, like, as I mentioned, a little bit kind of all over the place. But overall, I'm okay with it. I'm going to continue. It went maybe down a little bit because it might have been a pick of the week, but I'm just, yeah, it's okay. It's beautiful, as I mentioned, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned this one last time. The artwork is beautiful, really beautiful artwork, but it's disappointing when the story just doesn't quite, come close to the level of the art.
I would say if there was anything so far about our discussions here, that's a common theme, right? Mm-hmm. The story, the story matters. Yeah,
definitely. There are some books that I really love the artwork so much that I'll still try it just because I love the art. But yeah, it's tough when there's so many good books out there to read. It's tough to do that. So it's one of those weeks, I think, sounds like for both of us. But will you continue this one? Will you buy issue 3?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to continue, see where it goes. I don't know how many issues are planned. It's one of those where it doesn't say this is 2 out of 6 or.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'll get through a couple of quick ones here, and we'll get to our picks. My next one was Drive Like Hell #3. It's another one of those series that I've been on the fence on for a while. It's 3 of 4, and I know we keep saying this, but I really do love the artwork. It's very vibrant. The feel and the tone is really nice. It fits the story very well. But again, the story just isn't doing enough for me to continue. There's not enough meat on the bone to really keep me interested in it. And again, is the artwork enough to continue? And unfortunately for this one, it's just not enough for me to keep going. And there's some fun things being played with. I think there's some neat ideas. It feels like small things added in just kind of for comedic purposes, or, they're just not enough there. It's just not enough for me to continue. Just not enough story for me to grab onto. The premise is cool. It hasn't delivered on the storylines, and that's, even though there's only one more issue to go, I just there's not enough for me to just to pick another one up. So when we're in issue 3, and again, we're issue 3, we're introducing new things and new characters, and when we're introducing new things an issue away from wrapping up, it worries me, and it feels uneven. So I'm out on Drive Like Hell, even though I love the art. Yeah.
I think I'm envious. I feel like I should have pulled the plug on a few of these. I'm trying to be, maybe because I'm newer to this. I'm trying to be optimistic and think, well, like if you watch a movie, sometimes the ending surprises you or whatever. So
yeah,
I can see why you're pulling out on some of these for sure.
And part of my reasoning is that there's only, well, first of all, there's only so many books you can get to a week because we have a lot of other reading commitments and other things that we have committed to, and life and work and everything else. So first of it's the time, and then there's the investment in these books that you only have so much bandwidth you only have so much to play with. And when there's so many new books coming out that are new possibilities, sometimes you have to make room on the schedule and on the budget to try something new that maybe that you'll really fall in love with. So that's kind of the way I'm trying to view it, and not feeling too bad about giving up. Speaking of giving up, I have another one, which is Lotus Land #3. This one is a mix of Blade Runner, very Blade Runner vibes. At least the first 2 issues did. Some corporate intrigue, an old investigator, I really love those stories about like the old investigator, old warrior, old soldier who is kind of dragging himself along, and at one more hurrah, one more round. I really like those kind of stories. And with the fallout from issue 2, there's some pretty major things that happened in issue 2. Issue 3 kind of picks off where that left off, but it took a turn, and the elements that I was enjoying kind of disappeared, and it took a turn. It took a really sharp turn into a different. I just don't really want. I was hoping it wouldn't do this, and it did. So it took the series. It took the series in a different direction that I'm just not on board with, and another one that just isn't enough for me, and I'm dropping off of Lotus Land. It just isn't holding my attention, and I'm just not interested in where it's going. So, unfortunately, not enough for me to sink my teeth into. So that's it for me in Lotus Land, unfortunately.
I will say I'm a big fan of the old grizzly, soldier investigator type. It's can you think of anything that that's that kind of trope that in recent memory that you like?
That's a good question. I think the last thing I read that really scratched that itch for me was a short story by Richard Nell, and I forget the name of the story, but it's in Blackest Spells. It's a collection of short stories.
Okay.
And that was the last thing that really scratched that itch for me. But good question. Good question. I'll have to think on that. So this week, my pick, a very soft pick, but it's the best thing I read this week, which is Jennifer Blood, Battle Diary. And this one is by Dynamite Comics by Fred Valenti and Robert Carey, from probably butchering everybody's name. I love vigilantes. I love the vigilantes kind of it's a vigilante series, vigilante story. This one doesn't have the charm and the kind of the fun that Garth Ennis's run had, because I read the Ennis run when it was released. But who can really follow Garth Ennis? I mean, it's a tough act to follow. It doesn't have the kind of the weight and the fun factor that series did, but it's still fun. There's some things I really liked in this one, and it's enough for me to continue with this one. So it's the one series that I'm going to hold on to after the bloodbath of the week that I had. So, it's enough for me to continue. I think it's fun, and while there are it doesn't get too far into like current events, but I hope it doesn't go too current I hope it doesn't get too rooted in current events and let it weigh it down. There's enough that it makes you hate some characters, but hope it doesn't lean too heavily on that as we go. But I'm on board with Jennifer Blood Diary.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I talked about it last time, and one thing I will say, the first issue to me had a little bit more of that kind of off-kilter humor. Maybe this one not as much. There was a few characters that you're like made your head spin a little bit. But I'm glad you like that one, because I'm a fan as well. Okay, I guess my pick of the week, and it was a challenge for me to find a pick of the week, because it has to be something that I'm like, this is, this is like an A or an A plus, if you will, but I don't use, we don't use that type of rating system or whatever, but it is something that I do want to, if I'm, pick something and my name is attached to it, I do want it to be pretty good. This is the third issue of Deviant, which is from Image as well. And this is by Tinian the Fourth, Hickson, and Othman El Hau. What's really interesting is that I think this came out originally in November, and so there's a Christmas theme, but it's continuing here into January, and I think I thought I read somewhere there might be 6 issues, so we're going to have this Christmas theme going into April or May or what have you, maybe. So that's interesting in a way. It's different, well, we are getting a whole different point of view here, and this is from the point of view of Michael, the main character's partner, and he's kind of just doing his own thing. We get some ideas of what his life is like. He's kind of like a hospital worker, and he interacts. He's interacting with different people, but kind of commenting on his strange, relationship with the main character, Michael, who I mentioned earlier is this comic writer, and he's writing about like a kind of like a serial killer type of person, kind of like, and he wants to write a comic. So there's certainly a meta component to it that doesn't bother me that much if it's done well. And I think, the writing is decent. The structure is decent. This one, the pacing was not as good to me because there's just not a lot going on. But what is happening is you're seeing more dimensions to some of these characters. I'm looking forward to the next one to see what's going on. there is a lot of kind of bigotry happening because there's flashbacks to, I believe, the 1970s and how people viewed the LGBTQI type of community, although it wasn't called it then, but really focusing on just how people were just not tolerant at all back then. So that comes up quite a lot, and so it's a kind of a social theme. I mentioned that before, but it's horror. I'm getting back into horror. I've mentioned this before, Steve. I think you've influenced me a little bit there. I used to love it when I was younger, and then for a long time I was just like not into it. So that is intriguing to me here. So definitely going to continue. But like I said, it's a little bit lighter on the story. But again, the artwork is top notch. So I think the writing is the standout, probably overall for the series, for the 3 issues so far.
What are your thoughts on when a series gets meta like that? Are you a fan?
Yes and no, but now it's being done so much more. The TV series Community. I don't know if you watched that. It's like a comedy.
I used to.
I watched up until the 3rd season when it became extremely meta. If we can say that, but it's like commenting on itself, breaking the the fourth wall. This isn't doing that. This isn't over the top, really. I think you mentioned like Stephen King. A lot of his characters are writers, and this. It's not. I cannot say I have read a lot of books about with the main character as a comic book writer. So it's not. In this case, it's okay. I don't know if I'm a huge fan overall. But what about you?
I'm not a fan usually, unless it goes all in. Like I think it's safe to say like Deadpool is kind of meta. I think it breaks the fourth wall. I think if you're going to do it, go all in and be ironic and be funny about it, like wink and a nod kind of thing. But typically, I'm not a fan, especially with Steve. Like I know there's a lot of Stephen King fans out there, but when there's so many stories about him or about an author, that's okay. I get it. You're an author, we know. So, but it's very hit or miss for me.
Yeah. So it's not a strong pick of the week for me, but I think the series is overall strong. So, yeah, I think that wraps us up, right?
Yeah, I think so. I did hear some news this week, the rumor mill. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed yet, but I did hear that DC Comics is assembling a team of writers and creators to create like an ultimate universe, like a kind of like relaunch, like a side universe with all their characters and kind of start from the ground up. And I was excited to hear that. I think it'll be fun to get into and kind of like a fresh start. There are Elseworld stories. DC has Elseworld stories already, but from what I understand, they're launching like a universe based around like an ultimate universe, like Marvel has the Ultimate Universe. So I'm excited for that. So hopefully that'll come to fruition and we can dig into that. That's for a reader like me, and maybe I think it's safe to say for you too, being able to jump on and kind of start the ground up and kind of where it all began. There's an appeal to that, to start fresh.
So it's gonna. Do we know of any like names of people attached to it? Because that I think we'd love to know.
I've heard Scott Snyder is leading the team. I think he's assembling the team and kind of taking the reins. From what I understand, I think it's all rumors at this point. But if Scott Snyder's involved, then it's like okay, like all right. I'm curious.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see how it works out. But for the next 2 weeks, you'll be traveling, so you'll be gone. But also, when you're gone, I'll be doing some catch up and catching up with some books that that you've already discussed or that I've had sitting in the stack for a while I haven't gotten to. So we'll do some catch up while you're gone and hold on the fort.
Yeah. It's going to be a bummer I won't be with you for a little while there, but I did pick up my comics, so well, maybe we can figure something out. Maybe I can send you a few notes of what I read, or if not, we can maybe cover them and do a bigger episode, when I return. But I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue the best I can.
Yeah, I think we could do a big issue 30 or episode 30 when you get back.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, do a monster, a giant size issue. So, but yeah, so kind of a rough week. I don't like to get too critical on things, but sometimes just stories just don't work for you, and you have to, this is what it is. But I'm hopeful for there's always next week, right? There's more comics to get to.
Exactly. They keep pumping them out, and we keep falling for it. We're suckers, so.
Oh yeah. I'm a mark for sure. They see me coming every time. And we are discussing The Fade Out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. So if anyone is interested in that, that'll be coming very soon. And we discussed the first volume, but we'll be discussing the rest sometime soon. So that'll be released shortly. And of course, all the other stuff, we're also amassing a list of trades and other stories we want to read. So lots more stuff coming down the pipe.
Great. Yeah. So until next time.
Yeah, we'll talk to everyone soon. You can find us both on pagetwoing.com. Just visit our forums and come and say hello. And you can join any of the conversations open to anyone who wants to join and have a good chat. So we'll see everyone very soon.